All right, welcome back, trainers. Here, I'm Tyson Hughes again, once again joined by Justin Karras here for our top 8 of Alpensee Tour. Super excited to immediately get into this match. We've had so many exciting games so far here for you guys today, and to break down this next one of top 8, I'm super excited.
Yeah, the next one that we're going to be seeing, I don't know if we've had the selected match yet. Was it the for top
It's gonna
8?
be Finabas versus our opponent here is going to be, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Slotin Sturm. Is going to be our top 8 there. Both Alpensee players as well, which is going to be great to showcase some talent, who is putting on the stream. It'll be a phenomenal match. I think we can actually break down what both of these players are playing. A little bit of mix of both of the usage stats as well that we just had featured on the stream. Aerodactyl and that Floette there with Incineroar, Sinistra, King Gambit, and Sneasler for Sela. And for Finabas, the Whimsicott, Mega Gengar, Incineroar, Mega Garchomp, Rotom Wash, and Sneasler.
Yeah, and normally I would default to saying something like Mega Gengar and Garchomp are not two megas that you'll see paired together too often, but in this metagame, it's kind of the wild, wild west. One of the more powerful combinations that we're seeing in the early metagame right now is Encore and Disable, but we don't even have that option. As you're seeing, there is no Disable on that Gengar. But Encore still always being a powerful move, and Whimsicott and Gengar don't necessarily need that tool to be able to function well. Fake Tears is excellent for picking up knockouts. Gengar does have a crazy high special attack stat, and Incineroar and Gengar match excellently in terms of their typing. I'd be interested to see whether or not this Garchomp comes and does not Mega, or vice versa with the Gengar. Having two Megas on your team, it doesn't look like there are two distinct modes, or at least they're not entirely clear to me. But I think the way they match up into Sela's team is pretty interesting. Having Aerodactyl as your speed control option is awesome when you're facing a Zard Y team, but it's not necessarily great against a Mega Garchomp team. Incineroar, being able to turn that Garchomp's attack down a little bit is going to be valuable, but I don't know exactly where the speed control is going to kind of get jousted.
Yeah, absolutely. And having access to something like Whimsicott there, as you mentioned, with the priority Tailwind is definitely going to give a little bit of an edge versus Sela's Aerodactyl, which has to go for Tailwind. But don't get it twisted. Aerodactyl is still very fast with that 130 base speed. Being able to go for that Tailwind, if it can get it, if you can fake out the Whimsicott, is a great option. You also have things like Dual Wing Beat to immediately get rid of the Whimsicott as well. Floette here is going to struggle a little bit against something like the Mega Gengar, having Substitute as well to not only is it going to eat the hits, it's going to eat it behind Substitute. But we're going to immediately get into the game here with our lead. Sela leading off with Aerodactyl and Sneasler, and Finabas leading off with Gengar and Sneasler of their own.
Yeah, and Aerodactyl, as I said earlier, is going to be the speed control option here. Sneasler versus Sneasler early games are always interesting to see. I'm wondering, especially with the threat of Mega Gengar being able to trap everything on the field, if this is a position that Sela even wants. Is there something that they're going to want to reposition to? And is the Sneasler going to maybe call that? Incineroar looks very free here. I don't know if that's exactly going to happen, but Incineroar would love to be on the board here. And it's not the worst idea sometimes to run a little bit of extra speed if you have a Tailwind option, so that way you can outspeed something like a Mega Gengar.
Yeah, we are going to see Finabas switch out their Sneasler for Garchomp here, bringing both of the potential Mega Evolution Pokemon, but choosing to Mega Evolve the Gengar instead and lock in both of these Pokemon for Sela, considering neither of them can switch out with any pivoting moves. Aerodactyl going for the Protect there to stall against any fake outs that Finabas could have thrown out, and a Shadow Ball outspeeding the Sneasler here is going to do so much damage to Sela's Sneasler. It now, with the White Herb, is going to actually get that drop as well, proccing the Unburden and close combat off into the Garchomp, doing a nice amount of damage. But most importantly here, the Sneasler is not going to be able to remove those close combat debuffs with the White Herb because of the Shadow Ball drop.
So funny that White Herb procced and ended up getting kind of like a beneficial position from what should be a bonus thing. the special, or sorry, a hurtful thing, which is your special defense dropping. The white herb being proc there is crazy, and now the Sneasler is the fastest thing on the board, so it can, instead being pinned down by that Gengar for the potential Shadow Ball from next turn, actually threaten this Garchomp and pick it off. That completely changes the dynamic of this next turn's plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And with something like the Aerodactyl now having preserved that Focus Sash, Sneasler with the Unburden is going to outspeed everything. Getting the knockout onto that Garchomp, I think, trading very, very well. This Garchomp is going to have to choose what it wants to do, is to break that Focus Sash or just get the knockout on the Sneasler. It does look like Finabas does want to just remove Sela Sneasler from the field, and that means this Aerodactyl is going to be left to, instead of go for Tailwind, goes for a dual wing beat and misses it into the Gengar. That crucial damage into this otherwise bulky beast is going to be left untouched for Finabas.
I have a known I have a penchant for saying that inaccurate moves are kind of like different feelings of inaccuracy. I love to talk about how Play Rough doesn't really feel like it's 90% accurate. Dual Wing Beat is competing for a spot in that accuracy check. It's a Pokemon that doesn't feel, it's a move that doesn't feel as accurate as it's listed.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aerodactyl, unfortunately, missing there is going to be a huge loss. In front of a King Gambit, or excuse me, King Gambit coming in here for Sela is going to be great, though, at pressuring something like this Gengar, though. The King Gambit, though, on Sela's side is Black Glass, is not going to be able to eat. Something like close combat, that's not going to be a problem, though, with Aerodactyl outspeeding the Sneasler, and with the dual wing beat, actually expecting this time you're able to get the knockout on the Sneasler there. And Gengar going for a substitute there on Finabas' side, seeing this King Gambit, staring it down, knowing that it has the potential to just knock it out. Kowtow Cleave, though, is going to remove that substitute. Very good call from Sela, not just getting baited into going for something like Sucker Punch, maybe seeing how much damage you could potentially do. And yeah, that's just going to be a forfeit from Finabas there, recognizing that two of the Pokemon have been lost, and not even being able to break the Focus Sash on the Aerodactyl there is just kind of a really rough spot.
Yeah, that was so unfortunate. Losing the Garchomp that early is really dangerous. It's one of the best options that you're going to have to take out pieces like that King Gambit. And King Gambit is one of the most threatening pieces that Sela has, especially in dealing with that Mega Gengar. It almost completely walls it. And that's why it's good to have the option for substitute on Gengar. You can get around that Sucker Punch. You can, kind of buy yourself a little bit of extra HP as a resource. But as we saw there with everything, all the ground that was being seeded, that substitute didn't look as powerful. The Kowtow Cleave was pretty easy to go for. It wasn't under threat on that turn. And as you said, that Focus Sash still being intact, it was going to be a very big uphill battle for our players to climb there. And Sela looked like an excellently positioned game one win there. That was incredible work. I'm surprised that the Aerodactyl was as impactful as it was in that match, especially when I talked earlier about the mega damage matchup there. But without there being a Zard Y, it still looks to function into other megas like Gengar, and being faster than Garchomp is very valuable. That threat of Tailwind would have been there even if that Unburden hadn't procced.
And Aerodactyl, I think, is one of the big winners of a power level format, where a lot of these Pokemon really do just rely on their speed. So being that base 130 speed is absolutely phenomenal. Being able to go for those Tailwinds, even though it is a frail Pokemon, and that rock coverage as well in a Charizard Y meta is absolutely great. And Dual Wing Beat being able to get knockouts, Dual Wing Beat being a modern move, being able to get knockouts onto things like the Sneasler are phenomenal. But we are going to see new leads here for Sela and Finabas, being the Aerodactyl and the Floette for Sela, and the Gengar and Rotom Wash for Finabas.
Yeah, this is a good adjustment. I think that Rotom starts out a little bit differently. You can immediately pressure that Aerodactyl. And the Gengar, again, it's just weird that the Gengar and the Aerodactyl are the same speed. I don't know, though, that with Floette and Mega Floette's massive special defense stat, that it's really under threat here. It might be able to survive even a double up and still get a Calm Mind off, and that would spell a lot of danger. If there is a Tailwind and a Calm Mind here, it would be very difficult to recover. As you can see on Finabas' team, there is not a single Fairy Resist outside of that Gengar.
Yeah, and this Rotom Wash is going to have to be very careful of what it locks into, being that it is the Choice Scarf. So yes, you do outspeed something like the Aerodactyl, but you, of course, could just go for a Protect on both sides here. I mean, you're locked in either way against this Mega Gengar that we now see for Finabas' side. You can just lock you already know you're going to get locked in. Just see what the Rotom maybe locks into. Go for a Protect on both your Pokemon and see what happens. You, of course, could go for a Tailwind as well. You know that there is no Fake Out pressure here on the board. And yeah, no Protect from either. Volt Switch in the Aerodactyl, bringing it down to essentially what is its Focus Sash at 19 HP. Rotom is going to be able to pivot itself out and switch its position for another Pokemon in the back for Finabas. It's a question of which Pokemon it is, and the Incineroar is going to be the option of choice here, positioning itself for a Fake Out against this Floette. Next turn is going to be very nice. This Rock Slide, though, doing so much damage to both the Incineroar and Gengar, even at -1. Gengar, though, is just going to go for a Sludge Bomb into the Floette. Eats it not too well, even with the high special attack being a super effective move. It still does a lot of damage. Moonblast, though, into the Incineroar in combination with the Rock Slide is able to get the knockout with critical hit. I'm not sure if that critical hit mattered. Floette's Fairy Aura Moonblast is very strong, depending, of course, on how these trainers trained their Pokemon. That Moonblast critical hit could have been absolutely huge, but getting rid of that Incineroar is massive.
And honestly, I'm shocked that that got there. The critical hit being a big factor. Again, people do like to run their Incineroar as pretty specially bulky. It has a lot of stats to work with, but not having access to that Incineroar, being down a game, you know, Finabas' back is up against the wall here. This is where you really have to make your plays count. I don't know if it's worth, you know, potentially attempting to get that speed tie on the Aerodactyl, get the knockout right away, because if this Tailwind goes up, that could spell doom for this top 8 match.
Yeah, absolutely. But with Aerodactyl and Floette both locked in here against this Mega Gengar, I feel like Finabas has a free route to just setting up a substitute and kind of tanking it out against the rest of Sela's Pokemon, of course, depending on what's in the back. Without Incineroar, though, to fake out and slow the tempo of the game a little bit, I'm a little worried if Sneasler and Kingambit are going to be able to run through the game like we saw in Game 1. Sludge Bomb there, just getting the knockout onto Floette. No, not going for a substitute at all. Volt Switch trying to go into the Aerodactyl as well. Leads me to believe that maybe Sneasler is in the back for Sela here, able to just fake out the Rotom and go for something like a Tailwind, forcing this Gengar to just keep going for attacks instead of getting up that substitute instead.
Yeah, the Rotom having the Choice Scarf there was really powerful. Like, it prevented the Tailwind from even being an option. And as you pointed out, this is actually a great position to kind of reverse the momentum here. The Gengar getting the knockout onto the Mega, you have so much HP to work with. The Aerodactyl was basically forced to protect. I think it's going to come down now to what the last is. I would expect it potentially to be Sneasler. And if the Sneasler, and I'm talking about on Finabas' side, not on Sela's side. Sela going into Sneasler here is valuable, but it doesn't have the potential to get a knockout threatened on either Pokemon, and it doesn't outspeed either as well. So this Aerodactyl is literally stuck on the board. Maybe its only option, able to go for a double protect. I'm wondering where Finabas is going to target the damage. Getting that Volt Switch off, going for the knockout there would be powerful. I don't know if you risk the potential of a substitute. I don't know that Sneasler could even break a substitute with any of its attacks. It would be great, though, however, to potentially reduce the chance for Dire Claw to sleep you.
But with Volt Switch there, getting the knockout on Aerodactyl is going to allow this Rotom to once again reposition for Finabas there. This Sneasler, though, like you said, is going to have a very hard time of getting through this Gengar, and that's kind of the big question is, when are you able to get Kingambit in to kind of deal with this Gengar? Because if you can remove the other pieces from Finabas' side, like this Sneasler that is staring you down, the matchup is definitely playable. Shadow Ball there going into the Sneasler, not able to get the knockout. Close combat, though, is going to do a nice chunk to Sneasler, even though it is a resisted hit. And with that defense and special defense drop there, with the proccing the White Herb is going to allow you to outspeed the Gengar now. And it's going to come down to if you're able to position your Kingambit. It is the last 2 Pokemon for Sela here, but if you can kind of weave in an attack or two and get rid of this Sneasler, I think this is still winnable for Sela.
Yeah, I think what's What's crazy is that the fake out pressure is still viable. You can fake out the Sneasler and go for, or fake out the King Gambit and go for a substitute with Gengar, so that way you can end up having the position to close out the Sneasler on the next turn. I don't think it's just going to be awkward with how much HP you have left on your Gengar, because if you get like a sucker punch into that substitute, even if it's after it's set up, the Gengar might end up going down with all of that chip to like maybe a Dire Claw crit. So like 100% guaranteeing this end game is not entirely clear. That close combat being eaten on that Sneasler was actually really dangerous. I'm wondering how this turn is going to play out. Do we just see a double protect? I think the King Gambit is just going to double protect. Stall things out here for a second. A little bit risky because fake out and substitute, as I said, is the clear option to go for here. And Gengar ends up not doing it. I'm so shocked here. The Gengar, maybe either getting a little bit greedy there and trying to take this Sneasler, or there is a Pokemon like Garchomp in the back that is probably just going to end up closing this game out. Sorry, there is no Garchomp. There's a Sneasler still left.
Yeah, because the Incineroar got knocked out early, honestly, I would have thought the same. The Incineroar not making much impact in this game, thinking that maybe there's a mystery fourth Pokemon. We do know that it is Rotom in the back, but with that Choice Scarf there is going to maybe be able to seal up this game as long as you get rid of the Sneasler. As we see it be withdrawn there from Finabas, very good at preserving that fake out and that super effective close combat damage. Sucker Punch is going to fail into the Gengar there, or maybe the Sneasler. Close combat is going to be into that Rotom Wash. Not able to get the knockout though, but definitely bringing it within Sucker Punch range. And yeah, Gengar there is going to go for a substitute finally. But this thing about this turn is that Sela again is once again in the game still, because you didn't go for a substitute on that double protect turn. That Sucker Punch forced you to go for a substitute this turn on Finabas' side, and you lost the opportunity to get rid of Sneasler. So now you have to play around with the fact that Rotom can get Sucker Punched. Of course, you could go for a trick into the King Gambit, but that leads you, of course, to mind games and things like that. And again, this is very winnable for Sela if they're able to get the turns correct.
I think Sela is completely identified that the way that Finabas actually does even really have a chance in this game is, either a trick end game with the Rotom where you can trick the Sucker Punch, or Sneasler needs to survive and be able to get that close combat. But we're seeing a trick, which means that it is not even going to have that Sucker Punch option. It did not lock into Sucker Punch there. Gengar going to go for the Shadow Ball. It's going to target into that Sneasler Protect. I think this is the right sequencing. And now the King Gambit does not have Sucker Punch pressure. It is forced to go for another Kowtow Cleave. And the Gengar can potentially get this knockout into the Sneasler. Sneasler will then protect on Finabas' side, and close combat will close out the game. That should be the sequence. The only thing that will potentially, throw a wrench into that plan is if Sneasler on Sela's side does get the double protect, should they choose to go for it.
Yeah, and I think that double protect is going to be their way back into the game here if they can get it. And that could be a potential swing around. But with this King Gambit not having the option to protect, now being choice locked into that Scarf, this should be a for Finabas, especially with that substitute now set up on Gengar. Like you said, no Sucker Punch is available for Sela. So being locked into this Kowtow Cleave, you do beat the Gengar in the 1v1, but Finabas did a great job at preserving that Sneasler, making sure you could get it in a position exactly like this against the King Gambit, remove it from the game. We do see the double protect fail though on Sela's side as Finabas goes for that protect there, just again accurately going for the correct sequencing there into both of the Pokemon, recognizing that, if this Sneasler is left to hang around, it could potentially swing the game in Sela's favor. And with that, though, King Gambit is going to go for a Kowtow Cleave into the substitute, removing it with no option of Sucker Punch next turn. And with that, I believe Finabas should just win the game.
Yeah, that was a beautiful sequence there from Finabas. And now, apologize, I did nerd out a little bit because I was excited to see that this is kind of like what checkmate looks like in Pokemon. And in some cases, it sucks that there's only a 30% chance or, 70% chance that it's checkmate. Maybe you can throw the extra percentages of, you needing to get your own double protect on the following turn if they do get the double protect into that mix. But we're going to have a lot of new people joining this game. So seeing how people play these best of threes out and find these locked boards is so fascinating to me. And we're seeing older veterans, people that are playing from a long time, the prehistoric ages like me, trying to do their best to show what they can. That type of game right there is awesome. Seeing the trick play was so smart. It was almost a guaranteed route. I'm surprised that the substitute didn't come out earlier on that fake out board where Sneasler could come in. But again, in some cases, maybe they go for Dire. I don't know the damage roll. I think that the Dire Claw may have a chance, even as a resisted attack, to potentially break that substitute. So ending up getting it on a turn where there was kind of the pressure drawn towards the Sneasler on the following turn was really valuable. Watching
Yeah.
VGC kind of at this high level, watching the two players kind of do this battle, this mental battle back and forth of how do I find my footing to where like I have the knockout punch is really when it gets fun to watch. And now we're going into a game 3 where Mega Gengar looks like I got a bad matchup into King Gambit. Maybe is not able to threaten a one-hit KO through a sash on an Aerodactyl, but it does present an excellent tool for controlling the board and getting rid of that Sneasler, which, as we see, has become really important with that White Herb Unburden proc. It does so much once it's that fast.
Yeah, and being able to lock in Pokemon with Mega Gengar's Shadow Tag ability gives tools like Scarf Rotom a lot more flexibility than it otherwise would have. It's very safe to just go for a double protect and then switch out accordingly a lot of the time. But with Mega Gengar on the board, that's usually not an option. But actually, a switch up here, a more offensive lead from Finabas there, just leading into that Earthquake next to the Levitate on the Garchomp. So Rotom Wash and the Garchomp for Finabas, and the Incineroar and Floette for Sela.
Yeah, and I think that, forcing the other player to kind of focus all of their resources into your Mega Floette, a Pokemon that can probably just completely run away with the game if it gets one Calm Mind boost up, is really important. I would like to see Finabas maybe try and reposition their tools here. It's not the worst idea to just slow the game down, get your Incineroar in, have the Garchomp come in at a better time. But it's also so fascinating to me that like we're using Garchomp. It may not even Mega, because you might want to save your Mega Evolution for Gengar later. And it operates completely as a Pokemon that doesn't need its Mega Evolution to do its job.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to see the Floette Mega Evolve, though, in front of both these Pokemon. Garchomp on Finabas' side, going for the attack, knowing that this fairy type move is going to do a lot of damage. Fake out into the Scarf Rotom, very, very safe here. And a Dazzling Gleam, just trying to do consistent damage to both of the Pokemon. This Rotom Wash is going to have to take a lot of damage there, already going down to the yellow. That fake out was super safe from Sela's side there, knowing that the Rotom is scarfed and doesn't have Protect on it, can just lock that slot on and guarantee damage. And now I'm really scared for Finabas, because in the other two games, or at least in game 2, we saw the Rotom be preserved in a way that it was able to take a hit and survive and eventually get the trick off in the end game. But now, with it already at 50 HP, this is going to be very difficult, I think, to come back from. Electro Web, though, is going to slow the pace for Sela just a little bit and allow this Garchomp to potentially outspeed the Floette. And yeah, it does. They're going to be doing a lot of damage, super effective damage to the Incineroar and the Floette. Bring Incineroar down to 50% and Floette almost to 50% as well, but he's going to have to eat this Dazzling Gleam.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, Fairy Aura is ridiculous. That is too much special attack to have Fairy Aura in a non-restricted format. Garchomp is gone. Rotom is gone. There are only 2 Pokemon left in the back for Finabas. This is a Game 3 scenario, and it is not looking good. However, for Sela, with Floette on the board, not having to expend much HP at all, and all 4 Pokemon available to them, things are looking great. How do they really close this game out? I think Finabas has that Gengar in the back. I would say maybe the Sneasler is going to be the 4th. We've seen it pretty much in every single game. It's been a crucial piece, especially for dealing with that King Gambit late. And while it does look bad in terms of total Pokemon count and the HP available, it's not out of the realm of possibility for this Sneasler to be able to pull this game off almost entirely on its own, because it does hit so much of Sela's team for super effective damage. And Substitute, again, is also just a great tool for, setting your Gengar up for that end game. There is still a path to victory here for Finabas. It is not over yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though it isn't a lot of HP done to either Sela's Pokemon, they both are in range of something like Sludge Bomb from Mega Gengar, as well as a close combat into that Incineroar. And with Incineroar being on the field here for Sela, if it switches out here as we see, there's not going to be much in the back that wants to switch in unless it's a Sinistra this time for Sela. Switching up what was in the back, this Floette now gets a bunch of HP back thanks to that Hospitality, has the potential now to hang on against something like the Sludge Bomb, and this is just a close combat into that Incineroar slot and a Sludge Bomb. This is looking very good for Sela. And yeah, we see the Mega Evolution from Gengar. Sludge Bomb into the Floette is able to hang on thanks to that Hospitality. If the Sneasler did not double into the slot, it did not. This Moonblast has the potential to knock out the Sneasler. And if this does, Finabas is in a dangerous position.
It does, in fact, secure the KO, and that spells almost imminent doom. I do not see this Gengar getting its way through what I assume is going to end up being a last of a King Gambit. And, you know, Sinistra actually has enough special defense, especially with the way that trainers have been training them to survive a Shadow Ball, even from a Mega Gengar. Floette, however, flexing its bulk there, being able to survive that Sludge Bomb was massive. And now remember, everybody, it's fun to do the 252 spreads. You can recruit and roll in that Pokemon ranch, but having EVs that can do things like that exact job is very valuable. We're seeing two extremely important calculations happening right here. That Shadow Ball that I just mentioned, and then the Sludge Bomb also not getting that KO on Floette, even after a little bit of chip, which is crazy. The Gengar are going to take almost half of its HP. Moonblast doing almost half to a Mega Gengar is so absurd. What is this Pokemon?
It is a Xerneas in a baby format, essentially, and this Pokemon just showing why it is one of the best in the format. Rage Powder here to redirect another attack here. The Sinistra is going to have to eat this Shadow Ball that Gengar throws out here. Sela's Floette, though, perfectly positioned here to just do so much damage, potentially taking all 4 knockouts this game, or at least being contributor of 99% of the damage. Dazzling Gleam doing so much, bringing this Gengar down to 8 HP with Incineroar, and what I assume is the King Gambit in the back should just be enough. Just a pure Pokemon perspective, just having enough is just too much for Finabas to deal with now at this stage of the game.
And this is the type of thing that you look for in Pokemon. Somebody just got completely checkmated in the game 2, and then to just absolutely flip the table over and say, no, this game 3 is going to me. I have a perfect, flawless game plan that I'm going to execute. And then to just do it that simply. As soon as that turn 2 happened, as soon as that Dazzling Gleam was off, things, you know, Sela was in the driver's seat. And I think that the EV spreads being a huge difference here, knowing that you're not at the threat of the Sludge Bomb getting the knockout, knowing your damage calculations early can be a huge thing. In some cases, it's also a buff too. Like, you might be able to play on your ability to know your damage calculations for the people that are potentially going to like Indianapolis or Turin, the special event in person. You're going to look for like the smaller advantages that you can have as a player. Going into a new era of Pokemon and a new game and a new meta, these are the types of things that make a humongous difference. People aren't going to know exactly how much damage a Sludge Bomb does to a Mega Floette, especially because the spreads can vary so much. That can be a much more offensive Floette. It could be a much more bulky defensive. You can be in a weird middling speed tier where you operate under Trick Room. There's so much cool stuff. There's so much information that you need to process. And positioning wise, it might have looked like this Sneasler could do completely rip through the Sela's team, and Gengar also with the damage there, being able, like, it looked like there were all the tools available, but all you needed were your Pokemon to survive that one hit with 1 HP, because then you have redirection, then you have another turn to be able to swap in Incineroar, get that fake out, and all of a sudden the victory condition is gone, and you are out of a Sneasler because it's gone to that Moonblast, and Gengar can't do it alone.
Yeah, and Floette just able to do so much damage. Like, I'm just kind of baffled by how much that Dazzling Gleam did, especially that turn 1 on Rotom. Bringing it down to yellow, it didn't even have to set up a Calm Mind. That was just the pure aura of having high special attack, and that Fairy Aura in combination was just able to steamroll the game. And I think that unique switch up that Sela had there to bring in that Sinistra, that foresight, I guess, recognizing of how it played out in game 2, recognizing I know my Pokemon, I know how they're trained, bringing in a Sinistra here, I'm going to be able to live the Sludge Bomb, and if they don't double that slot, I just kind of win the game. And we saw that play out in full force there. But congratulations there to Sela to advancing to the next stage of this tour as we slowly wrap up. But that's going to be it here for our top 8. We're going to cut to a quick break, and I think maybe some trivia or some stats. I'm not sure yet, but there will be something after our quick break. But that's going to be it from me and Justin, and we'll pass it off to our next casters soon enough. But don't go anywhere. There'll be more Pokemon action soon enough.